Hey everyone, this is Ryder from Skip, and I have an important video related to the latest on stimulus round two and the renewed momentum today. This is new news from today. The momentum that is being talked about in the Senate to finally pass the next stimulus bill. Why it's so important now, and how it relates to the protests and general unrest and frustration that is across the country right now. So I'm going to get into that and talk about the bill progress and talk about the very likely, if not certain, uptick in cases that will likely result, will be some of the collateral damage from these justified protests. So thanks again for your support and subscribing. It means so much. So first of all, this is the map from NBC. There have been over 250 protests, rallies, and vigils across the country. People coming together to show their support. And of course, there's the 10% or so that are also being destructive and hurting small businesses. I mean, these protests are amazing to see, and for people to come together and finally, demand reform and justice. But there's the collateral effect because we're in the pandemic, and there's a lot of discussion about this from experts here across the country that it is highly likely that we are going to see spikes in a few days to maybe within a week. Right, there is the lag. There is 2 to 14-day incubation period for COVID-19. And many of these cities only had hundreds of demonstrators, but many had thousands, and for multiple nights, and many not wearing masks. So, doctors, this isn't my just my opinion, but doctors are projecting that there will be an uptick this week. These are the trends, by the way, for everyone following along, that the death rate in the U.S. has gone down considerably, and we're at where we were beginning of April, and we are far from the peak that was middle of April. Infections has gone down, but not as quickly. Again, we would not be surprised at all if we see the end of this week that this is going back from 20,000 cases up to maybe the 30,000 cases per week mark. That being said, we heard that many testing sites closed down because of the civil unrest and the protests. I think LA said they closed their testing centers yesterday. Most are back open, so we definitely don't want people to feel discouraged, and we don't want people to have the question, is my testing site open or not? But just want to point this out, that this is likely going to happen. Increase in infections. And we're already hearing some stories about people at the protests who were infected. So, yeah. So there's this. The Wall Street Journal reported today that many officials fear a renewed spread that's coming. And then USA Today also pointed out public health officials warn new cases of COVID will probably emerge, and health experts fear the carriers with no symptoms could unwittingly infect others at the protests. And this is one example in Tampa. One person known to have COVID-19 was at one of the protests, and of course, we're gonna find out that people at the protest have been infected, and then there's just going to be a kind of this question mark: was I near this person or not? And frankly, it's going to be almost impossible to understand in terms of contact tracing, since these were mass crowds in many cities. But moving on to the stimulus, so I just wanted to I want to talk about that infection rate's probably going to go up, and it's hurting a lot of states who were reopening more this week, and so many small businesses have been hurt. And jobs as well. So some good news is that, of course, a lot of these businesses have insurance. There are some relief funds for businesses that have been looted. It's kind of a consolation uh, you know, relief. But the fact is that if businesses are completely looted, especially small mom and pops, and we've looked at some of the data and we've been researching a lot of these. A lot of the stores in Minneapolis were local stores, and that's what people have been working towards for for a good part of their life. That it's going to be very difficult for them to reopen, even if they have insurance. Um, and many of the bigger stores too. Like I'm in Oakland, and just 2 blocks away is where much of the looting was happening at a lot of the stores, chains, CVS, Walgreens, Target, and a lot of those had jobs for people that are now going to be lost because those stores are going to be closed for a period of time. So that's why I predict this week unemployment's going to go up, infection's going to go up, and it just, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's likely what's going to happen. The flip side now, okay, the latest on the stimulus, and this is directly from today from Senator Schumer and Bernie Sanders. They called on Congress to act with a fierce sense of urgency and pass a new round of coronavirus relief legislation in light of the newly released report on the pandemic's expected economic impact. I'm going to show you that report in a second, but it basically predicts that GDP over the next decade will be down $16 trillion because of the pandemic. And again, this is what I've just been speaking about, but the public health officials warn that the countrywide demonstrations could be followed by a sudden increase of cases. And of course, businesses as well may decide that even if they haven't been shut down, they don't want to open up in the middle of these demonstrations. Many are boarded up or choose to proactively board up. So that's that's from the government. What we can expect. This is the letter they wrote today to the Congressional Budget Office. This is the report, rather, that shows that $16 trillion projected deficit over the coming decade, which is huge. I'll link to this in the description, but I think that will bring urgency, and the fact that this bill, the HEROES Act, right here, I'm going to look at GovTrack to show you, was proposed on May 12th. So that is 3 weeks ago. And the Democrats wanted to pass this quickly. Republicans wanted to do the wait and see. I think there are several reasons why it's critical now to pass this, and we shouldn't do the wait and see. According to the tracker here, this bill has a 95% chance of being enacted, which is great. However, it's really now at the negotiation stage. What exactly is in it? What are the amounts? And that's what the Republicans and Democrats have to work out. And frankly, the biggest question is timing. It's all well if it passes, but people need money now. It's June 1st. Rent is due. And a quarter of the country is unemployed. There are 3 other bills I'm going to briefly mention because they are also important, even though they are not getting as much attention as the HEROES Act, but it could mean money in your pockets. So there's Student Loan Forgiveness and Frontline Health Workers Act. If you're on the front line and you have student debt, this bill would forgive student debt. Again, this was proposed beginning of May by Representative Maloney. It's gone slower, and the prognosis is that it has a less than 10% chance of being enacted. But, we'll see how it progresses. I think the HEROES Act, then perhaps this act. Of course, the big one that passed 2 weeks ago was the Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act, which would change the forgiveness period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks to allow businesses that took the PPP a better chance of getting it forgiven. Again, that passed the House. We're just waiting on the Senate. Here it says there's only a 20% chance of it being enacted, but we've heard across the aisle from Democrats, Republicans, and even the president has commented that changes need to be made to the PPP. So I'm optimistic that this will be passed, which will help small businesses who have taken this money. That'll help you get it forgiven. Last thing is the TRACE Act, the Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone Act, which basically provides $100 billion to tracing, to many organizations and medical centers, to help them trace. And the reason I brought this up is because, again, to reopen effectively, we need testing, testing, testing. And especially with the protests and the very likely emergence of new hotspots in the end of this week or next week, we will need testing. We will need to have it available, easily available, so all of us can go get tests rather than infect. So it was introduced May 1st, again, moving slow, but and it has a 4% chance of being enacted, but in the HEROES Act, there's also funding set aside for testing too. So this is just slightly different than the HEROES Act, but the lawmakers may see that a lot of this is covered anyway in the HEROES Act. Again, we'll keep you posted on that, but I'm optimistic that since Congress came back today, they are back in session, that something will happen this week. Just going to show you our tracker here on the stimulus check distribution. So this is the good news as well, that almost a third of our Skip users have received their stimulus check. And again, on hellosskip.com blog, if you're still waiting, we have information for you on how you can track it with USPS. You may expect a debit card, who's going to get a debit card and why. So you can check out the hellosskip.com/blog for that. Again, this shows the trend. There was the spike in May, and now it's kind of slow and steady. I'm just going to show you here for the EIDL advances. 20% of Skip users have received their EIDL advance, and now 10% have received their loan. And finally, we just put up a survey today to ask you, what do you think about reopening in your state? Again, the state of protests, of course, is going to factor into a lot of the decisions that businesses make. But just generally speaking, do you think your state should be opening faster? It's opening too fast, or you're happy with the level of restriction in your state? So you can vote in the survey, and we're tallying the results. Right now, about half say they wish their state would reopen faster, and 40% say they are happy with the level so far. So anyway, that's at helloscope.com. I'm going to leave the link. It's free for all these trackers. So most importantly, please stay safe and stay healthy and take care. And please subscribe so we can keep doing this research and keep updating you, especially on the funding and the stimulus side of things, so you know what you can expect as an individual and a small business. Thanks again.